Countless thousands of these terrorists were welcomed into the U.S. by the Biden administration. But now every last one will be rounded up and forcibly removed from our country, or, if they're too dangerous, put in jails, standing trial in this country, because we don't want them to come back ever.
A striking statement from a United States judge has put the Trump administration's immigration policies under intense scrutiny. The judge remarked that even Nazis during World War II received more procedural rights than Venezuelan migrants are getting today. The comment came as the administration defended its use of the Alien Enemies Act to justify large-scale deportations. The Alien Enemies Act is a law that dates back to 1798. It was originally designed to allow the United States government to detain or deport foreign nationals from enemy nations during times of war or invasion. This law has remained largely dormant in modern times, resurfacing only in extreme circumstances, such as during World War II when it was used to detain Germans, Italians, and Japanese citizens. Now Donald Trump has revoked its dormant status, declaring that the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua constitutes an invasion of the United States. In a sweeping move, his administration used this law to order mass deportations of Venezuelan migrants, claiming they pose a national security risk. Trump has long taken a hard stance on immigration, but this move is unprecedented. By invoking the Alien Enemies Act, his administration bypassed the usual legal process that migrants undergo, including asylum hearings. Instead, the government rounded up Venezuelan migrants suspected of gang affiliations and deported them in large numbers, without individual hearings or legal counsel. According to official figures, more than 200 Venezuelan migrants were recently deported under this policy, with many more awaiting their fate in detention centers. The administration argues that these individuals are associated with Tren de Aragua, a violent transnational gang known for extortion, drug trafficking, and human smuggling. However, critics and legal experts have raised serious concerns. The biggest controversy is the lack of due process, meaning many deported individuals never had a chance to prove their innocence. There have also been reports of mistaken identities, where migrants with no criminal background were deported based on vague or faulty intelligence. While the Trump administration presents these deportations as a necessary security measure, the humanitarian consequences have been devastating. Many Venezuelan migrants came to the United States fleeing economic collapse and political repression in their home country. Some were seeking asylum, a right protected under international law, but were swept up in mass deportations without hearings. Families have been torn apart, with parents deported while their children remain in the United States. Reports indicate that some deported individuals face grave danger upon returning to Venezuela, especially if they are suspected of fleeing the regime of Nicolas Maduro. For many of these migrants, deportation is just the beginning of their suffering. Horrific stories are emerging from detention centers, where detainees are reportedly kept in overcrowded, inhumane conditions. Witness accounts describe freezing cells, limited access to food and water, and verbal and physical abuse by guards. Some migrants were shackled for hours, denied basic medical care, and subjected to degrading treatment, with reports of guards referring to them as enemy combatants. One Venezuelan man who was detained for weeks before his deportation described being beaten for asking for more food. Others recall being forced to sign documents they couldn't understand, waiving their right to appeal their deportation. Human rights organizations have called these conditions a violation of international law, likening them to wartime detention tactics rather than routine immigration enforcement. The Alien Enemies Act was originally created during the era of John Adams, at a time when the United States feared war with France. It was designed as a wartime measure, allowing the president to detain or remove citizens of hostile nations. The law remained largely unused until World War I and II, when it was deployed to detain German, Italian, and Japanese nationals living in the United States. However, its use was highly controversial, particularly during World War II, when thousands of Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps, an action now widely regarded as a violation of human rights. Since then, the Alien Enemies Act has been viewed as a dangerous tool that could be misused for mass detentions and deportations under vague definitions of national security threats. That's why no modern US president has dared to invoke it, until now. The Trump administration's approach is part of a broader strategy to deter illegal migration. By making an example of Venezuelan migrants, Trump seeks to send a strong message. If you enter the United States illegally, you will be swiftly deported. There will be no asylum hearings if you are linked, rightly or wrongly, to criminal activity. The administration is willing to use extreme legal measures to curb migration. Trump has publicly stated that he wants mass deportations to continue, arguing that the United States cannot afford to harbor undocumented migrants who might be linked to crime. His hardline stance is expected to be a key part of his 2024 re-election campaign.
They heard my words and they chose not to come. Much easier that way. In comparison, under Joe Biden, the worst president in American history, there were hundreds of thousands of illegal crossings a month, and virtually all of them, including murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and people from mental institutions and insane asylums, were released into our country. Over the past 4 years, 21 million people poured into the United States. Many of them were murderers, human traffickers, gang members, and other criminals from the streets of dangerous cities all throughout the world. Because of Joe Biden's insane and very dangerous open border policies, they are now strongly embedded in our country, but we are getting them out and getting them out fast.
For now, Venezuelan migrants in the United States face an uncertain future. Many are living in fear of sudden deportation, unsure if they will have the chance to defend themselves in court. Meanwhile, the debate over the Alien Enemies Act continues to divide the country. Supporters see it as a necessary tool to protect national security. Opponents warn that it sets a dangerous precedent that could be used against any immigrant group in the future. One thing is clear, Trump's immigration crackdown is far from over. The battle over who gets to stay in America and under what conditions will likely shape United States politics for years to come. As this legal fight unfolds, thousands of lives hang in the balance. The question remains, will history view this as a necessary enforcement of the law or as a dark chapter of injustice?